Hear me.
I can hear you. All right.
Awesome.
All right. Well, welcome everyone for being here tonight. I'm going to take a moment to introduce our speaker. So, Dan Childs received a Master's of Science degree in Botany and Plant Pathology from Purdue University in 1987. He has worked in both academia and industry as a weed scientist and agronomist for 37 years, and he retired last year. Congratulations on your retirement. And he is a wildflower enthusiast and is the author of two wildflower identification field guides, Backroads and Into the Woods. And Dan shared with me that anyone who goes, oh, that's right, I see the books. Thanks for holding that up, Bill. That anyone who purchases the Into the Woods will get a free copy of the book Backwoods. So I will make sure that that information is part of the email that everyone will receive with the recording of tonight's presentation. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to you, Dan.
All right.
And, oh, one more thing. If you have
Yes.
questions during the presentation, feel free to put those in the chat. I'll be watching the chat box and asking Dan questions during the presentation. And at the end, everyone will have an opportunity to unmute and ask questions freely. Sorry about that. All right, Dan.
Yep.
Now
That's
officially.
fine. Yep. Yep. So yeah, I retired last September, and then I went back to work pretty quick. I'm working part-time for Prophetstown State Park, and I'm doing what I love, which is killing stuff. So I'm still killing weeds and working on their invasive plants that they have there at the park, and then doing some other odd things. So staying pretty busy, but getting out and walking trails like you folks are this time of year. Don't know about you, but I would like to see it just stay a little bit warmer for a consistent week or two. I saw 30s in the forecast, and I didn't like that. But so glad everybody could make it. Last year, Julie, we did a Zoom presentation on woodland wildflowers that bloomed from June through October, through the end of the season. So this year, we're going to go backwards and talk about the spring flowers that that bloom, in the spring. So, and a majority of those are the spring ephemerals, which ephemeral means short-lived or short life cycle. So these flowers in late winter, early spring, when the temperature gets, when the soil temperatures get warm enough, they come out of the ground pretty quick. They flower, they set seed, and the flowers wither. And now the leaves may hang on for a couple more months to soak in the sunshine, but they do all this quickly because of the shade that their giant neighbors are going to cast upon them fairly quickly. So that's the spring ephemerals. Now there are some other plants that we'll talk about that don't really fit into that category that are actually blooming now, and so we'll experience those. So here's your trail, and this picture was taken probably mid-March, something like that. You see a little bit of green, and as the sun hits the soil and the soil starts to warm up, I hit the key. Is it going to advance? Try it again. Oh, come on. Hello. There we go.
Technology.
I guess I'll have to use my mouse. I don't know. But yeah, so boom, all of a sudden, here's all these beautiful spring ephemeral flowers of all kinds. And we'll talk about a lot of these this evening. Now, I can't cover all of them. Obviously there's so many that we can't spend, in just a little bit of time here this evening to talk about those. But we'll do the best we can. So put on some nice comfy shoes and let's go for a walk in the woods. All right. Okay, my computer's working now. So before we go any further, before we look at some pretty flowers, I want to talk to you about Latin binomials, or as we like to call them, scientific names. So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, Dan, this is boring. Why are we talking about this? But hold on, because these names are actually kind of cool, kind of neat, because they have clues as to what these species are related to, what families they belong in, where they grow, how they grow, what flower colors they are, whether they're hairy or not hairy. So there's lots of neat little clues in the names of this of the species name. Okay, so Latin binomial. So the language is Latin. Binomial, bi meaning two, nomial meaning name. So it's a two-term naming system or a two-word naming system, and that makes up the species name. So it's kind of like your name. You know, you have a first name and you have a last name. Except in this case, it's reversed. Your last name comes first. So, for example, the first word is the genus. Okay, so if we're using that analogy, this would be your last name. So a genus is a subgroup of the larger family. So an example, trilliums. We're going to talk about trilliums here in a couple minutes. Trillium is a subgroup of the larger lily family. Lily family is a big family. It has a lot of genus is a part of that family. Yeah, I don't know what the plural for genus is. The second word is the specific epithet. Now, I could have came up with a better name than that, but they didn't ask me, so I would have just said it's the second word. But anyway, so it's a descriptor. It's an adjective, or it can mean a place. So some examples here. Albidum means white. Now, I think you can see that in the word, right? So A-L-B-I, albi is an albino, okay, white, pale. And then hirtus means hairy, reptans means creeping. There's purpureum, which means purple. There's a whole bunch of these, okay? A whole bunch of these second word or specific epithets. And with today's technology at our fingertips, we can pick up our smartphone and we can Google Latin to English translation, and it will give you the English synonym for that Latin word. So it's real quick, real simple, and then you can learn quite a bit just from the name. Or it could be a place, right? It could be Americanum, Canadensis, Virginica, Michiganese. I've seen Pennsylvanicum. So these are either, you know, places where the botanist discovered the plant, or maybe it's the place of origin, or maybe it's just a nice place to visit. I don't know. But I've been to Michigan. Michigan's a nice place to visit. So another example then is the second word is navali, and that means snowy. So if we're putting our two words together to make our species name, we have Trillium navali, and that we know is snow trillium. Okay, so see there, it was kind of fun, wasn't it? It wasn't too boring, but yeah, you should, if you get some time, just kind of look into the scientific names, because they do tell the story about these plants. Okay, let's get into it. Let's talk about the lily family. And as we mentioned just previously, Trillium is a big genus, part of that family. This is snow Trillium. This is one of the first flowers that you will see blooming in the very, very early spring or late winter. Soon after the temperature gets 35 degrees for a few days, you'll start to see these things popping through. So it's a kind of a sign of spring that's coming. This is the smallest Trillium that we have in this area. They're really small. They're about the size of a silver dollar. And I guess I should say, if you were born after the year 2000, you may have to ask your parents what a silver dollar is. I don't even know if they even make those anymore. I haven't seen one in years, but yeah, but they're like that, pretty small little plants, but beautiful, very bright white petals. Now, if you look at the name Trillium, first three letters is T-R-I, tri, which means three. So, Julie, can you see my cursor on the screen?
I can.
Okay. So, Trilliums actually have three sets of three. They have 3 petals. Okay, 1, 2, 3. They have 3 sepals. Now I'll have to go over to this one to see it. Here's one, here's another one, and here's one here that's hiding. So there's 3 sepals. These are look like modified leaves that are right underneath the petal. Then they have 3 petals. So 3 sets of 3 for trilliums. Prairie trillium, okay, we're seeing that now on the hikes that I've been on. It has a very long stem, so it's much larger than the snow trillium. Mottled leaves and these nice bright maroon colored petals. Another very similar species, or at least it looks like prairie trillium, is called Cecil Trillium. Now it doesn't have the long stem, it's pretty much right there on the ground. Now another way you can identify the two is looking at the sepals. Now notice the sepals here on Cecil Trillium are above the leaves. Okay, they point above the leaf. And if you look over here at Prairie Trillium, the sepals point down. Okay, they're below the leaf. Okay, so just another way of identifying those two trillium species. White trillium, it's probably the largest trillium flower that we have around the area. And actually get a bonus here. When this flower comes out, it's white, but as it ages, it turns pink. So you'll have some whites and then some pinks. So it's a pretty little flower and nice big heart-shaped leaves, but like the other trilliums, it has 3 sets of 3. Okay, here's another one called drooping trillium. And I was laying on my stomach, taking a picture up into the canopy here and try to get the right picture. And you notice the big leaves, but you notice here's a stalk, here's a flower stalk coming down, kind of drooping below the leaves. And the flower looks like this. So you got the 3 petals, and you got the 3 sepals. But you have a bonus here. If you look here at the tip of this, the pistil, which is the female part of the flower, is the stigma. And the stigma is usually a little knob. It's a place where the pollen lands, and that's where the pollen grain germinates, is on the stigma. Well, the stigma here is 3-parted, okay? So you have actually 4 sets of 3 now, if you're counting. So this one has a 3-parted stigma. Okay, the trout lilies. All right, so we've got, this is another genus of the lily family. And by the way, the lilies are very simple plants. Typically, you just have just a couple of leaves, you know, maybe 3 or 4 leaves, not very many leaves, a single flower stem, and the flower. And that's about all you get from the lilies. And typically, most of them grow from bulbs. So this is the yellow trillium. Yellow trout lily. This biotype, or this population, is about 300 yards from my house on a north-facing bank. And you notice that the petals kind of recurve backwards to expose the anthers. And so the anthers are these features right here, and they're you know, they're the ones that have all the pollen. And then right in here, you see the style, and then the stigma is here. Now, I have seen some other populations of yellow trout lily where the anthers are brown or maroon. Okay, I think I've seen a picture in one of the niches newsletters of a different type of yellow trout lily. But the maroon anthers would certainly accent the maroon spots that you see on those petals. And by the way, these aren't petals. So these are actually called tepals, T-E-P-A-L-S. And tepals is a fusion of the petal and the sepal. Okay, so for the trout lilies and for some of the other lilies, they're called tepals. Okay. All right, here's the white trout lily. And again, I was on my stomach here to take this picture. They're a pretty small plant, about 4 or 5 inches in height. Before the tepals curve backwards to expose the anthers here, they have kind of a hood, and that hood takes on kind of a light pinkish color. And so again, another bonus. You got two different colors here with this flower, but they don't they don't always curve backwards when you want it, right? So you're out there, you want to take a picture, and they're all closed up today. So you run out there when it's a nice, bright, sunny day, and maybe if you're lucky, you will see those tepals recurved back, and you can get a good picture like that. Wild hyacinth. Okay, so if you're out walking, you will notice these now, and it's huge colonies of these. You don't find just one or two plants. Usually it's a big bank of wild hyacinth on a east or yeah, sometimes a east sloping bank on the side of a hill. Just one main flower stalk, but then the flower stalk is covered with all of these nice flowers, kind of a light lavender to white, and then accented by all these bright yellow anthers that we have here. So wild hyacinth, and again, they grow in colonies. You see quite a few of these together. Then we have wild leeks. So I'll tell you a funny story. Several years ago when I was out in the woods and I was taking pictures, I saw these leaves, and they kind of remind you of daffodil leaves, right? And so I said, oh, okay, so something's gonna flower here. So I came back like a week later, no flower. Came back a week later, no flower. Where's the flower? and they actually do flower, but they're very inconspicuous. But it's not the flower that people enjoy. It's the underground bulbs, right? It's the edible bulbs that throw people into a frenzy, because it's a sign of spring, and the nature lovers like to eat these bulbs. So they taste just like your green onions from your garden. So the edible bulbs is what's prized by nature lovers. So who cares? Nobody cares about the flower. Everybody's after the bulbs. Okay, the buttercup family. Lots of members of the buttercups. This is hepatica, and it goes by hepatica, the genus name as well. They're, again, simple plants. All you see early in the spring is just the flower stalk and the flower. There are no leaves at first. These plants will flower. Once the flowers wither, then the leaves come out, and then they'll try to soak up as much sunshine as possible before the canopy of shade comes on. But if you look down at the bottom of this picture next to the bee here, just left of the bee, is an old leaf. This is from last year. So this is the leaves are kind of tough and leathery, but the new leaves won't come out until after these flowers are gone. Oh, and the hepatica, this is white, but I have seen other colors, purple, violet, different colors of hepatica. Not on the same plant, but like different biotypes, different populations. Okay, marsh marigold. This is one of my favorites. It is what's the word? Brilliant colors, bright yellow flowers with bright glossy green leaves, big old leaves, heart-shaped leaves. The stems are hollow, and these things grow in swampy areas. Okay, so fens, marshes, wet prairies. And what's really cool about this is they bloom early. So you're driving around, everything is just a dull brown because it's just middle of March or late March. Nothing's going on, and all of a sudden, out of the periphery of your eye, you see this green mound with yellow flowers, and that's marsh marigold. So it's a really cool plant, and it just jumps up and says, "Hello, spring." Okay, mustard family. Purple crest, there's lots of mustards again. Purple crest, has a relative called spring crest that looks very similar. The flowers kind of droop down at first. One thing about the mustards, the mustard family, is they have 4 petals. Okay, so all mustards have 4 petals. There may be some plants that have 4 petals that aren't mustards, but all mustards will have 4 petals. So spring crest, it also kind of grows in colonies. I believe I took this picture at the celery bog a couple years ago. Cutleaf toothwort. Okay, what a name for this. Again, 4 petals here. For some reason, this one only had 3. I think one of them was hidden. But it's the leaves that are kind of attractive because the leaves are in a whorled arrangement. Whorled means there's more than 2 leaves per node. So in this case, there's actually 3. There's 2 here, and there's 1 kind of hidden going back into the picture. And the leaves are deeply lobed and serrated on the margins here. Okay, and it takes on a palmate venation. Now, what does that mean? That means the veins and the lobes in this case resemble the fingers on your hand. So your hand has a central point, and then the fingers go out from there. So that's kind of what palmate venation means. Well, we have a couple of bad guys in the mustard family. Dame's rocket is actually a fairly really nice looking plant. It was, I think, planted probably at one time as in the garden for enjoyment there, but has escaped. We had a sprig of this come up in my woods behind our house, and my wife really enjoyed it, and I said, "I'm sorry, it's invasive, and we have to get rid of it." She goes, "No, don't get rid of that." But I didn't let it go to seed. But we enjoyed the flowers while they were there. But so Dame's rocket, pink, purple blooms, but the real enemy here is the garlic mustard. So this is a very invasive plant, as I'm sure everybody on this call knows, and you probably have green hands from pulling it. I know Mitch has had all kinds of pull days. I've seen trucks just loaded in the back with garlic mustard. And I've pulled a few of my share as well this spring. 4 white petals, kind of heart-shaped leaves. This is a biennial, so in the first year, it's just a mound of leaves, kind of basal leaves, and then it goes through the winter, and then the flowering stalk comes up the next year. So I want you to look at this picture here. So we have in the center of the picture a nice woodland wildflower. You see all these white petals in the yellow center here, but you notice there's more than 4 petals. So this isn't a mustard, and it's certainly not garlic mustard. This is bloodroot, but the leaves around the bloodroot are garlic mustard. So this is what this plant does. It chokes out our native plants. And so this is what we hate to see, right? This poor little guy is not going to compete with a great big old garlic mustard plant. So we want to get rid of them best we can, and pull and remove from the woods. You don't want to pull and lay down, because the seeds can still be viable, and you'll have a mess next year to take care of. Okay, the mint family. Mints are identified by one having typically square stems, and then 2 leaves per node, or we call them opposite leaves. And then if you look at the flowers, mints have 2 petals. Okay, they have an upper lip and a lower lip to the petals, to the flower. And you'll notice this lower lip here is speckled. And it's speckled because that is the landing pad for pollinators. So they're attracted to plants. The plants will try to do something to draw them in. Of course, when the pollinator, when the bee or fly gets there, he'll have a nice little nectar prize, hopefully. But when they're on that landing pad, if you notice at the top here where I'm pointing, while they're getting some nectar, the plant is rubbing pollen on their back. So kind of a sneaky way of doing it. But then the bee or fly buzzes to another flower, and then that pollen then rubs onto the stigma. And so that's how they are pollinated through these pollinators. But kind of a sneaky way of getting the pollen on the insects. This is purple dead nettle. It's kind of a weedy winter annual. In the spring, you will see just fields, 100-acre fields, just completely purple. and that's it's either purple dead nettle or henbit. Henbit is a relative of purple dead nettle. They're both in the mint family. But again, you have these two-lipped flowers. Here's the lower lip, and here's the upper lip, and the upper lip kind of conceals the stamen and the anthers and the stigma there. Okay, and this is what I call the odds and ends family. Okay, no, I just made that up. Each one of these is just kind of a one-off. So bloodroot is in the poppy family, and if you walk into a woods in the spring, you will see these right away because they're very bright. They don't get very tall. Most spring ephemerals don't get tall because they don't spend a lot of energy producing a big plant. They just want to flower, set seed, get as much photosynthesis as possible to go down to the roots so that it can survive the next year. So they don't put a lot of energy into leaves or stems. So this is bloodroot. The reason why it's called bloodroot is the leaves, stems, and the underground roots or rhizomes contain a orangish, reddish fluid or sap, which looks like blood. If you really want to surprise, especially kids, if you're taking some kids on a walk and you find some bloodroot, say, watch, I want to show you how this plant's going to bleed. And then you break it and it starts bleeding and they just all get kind of freaky. But then that's an educational moment, right? Okay, Dutchman's breeches. This is from the fumitory family. I believe it's related to, I forgot right now. It's an ornamental plant. Bleeding hearts, that's it, bleeding hearts. Notice the foliage is very soft, almost looks like a parsley type foliage, very lobed, but the flower is very unique. It looks like a man upside down with the breeches pointing upwards. If you can't see that real well, I'll turn it like this. Put some shoes on him. There he is. So hopefully you can do it. Little arms right there. So sometimes you have to have fun with Photoshop, right? Or with PowerPoint. The next one, pepper and salt. Okay, so this is probably my all-time favorite plant for a number of reasons. One, it's also called harbinger of spring. So when you see this, it's, spring is right around the corner. It blooms about the same time as snow trillium. But these are really small plants. They're only a couple inches tall. You can see here, they're just barely out of the leaf litter. The flowers are, bright white petals with the dark red or brown anthers, and that's where the pepper and salt comes from. But what's unique about this plant is that it's in the carrot family. Now that, may not be that unique, but which means it is a relative of giant hogweed that's 12 feet tall and about the size of a Christmas tree. So even though they're in the same family, they're completely different looking plants. And by the way, a little story on this one. I was out at Julie at one of the niches properties a couple years ago, and it was 35 degrees. I had my insulated coveralls on, and I was looking for this plant, and I found several blooming. Nothing else was blooming in the woods. It was just this, and there was about 4 or 5 honeybees on every plant. So the honeybees were out. They were foraging, looking for something, and they landed on pepper and salt.
Neat.
Okay, spring beauty. Everybody's seen these. It's the iconic spring flower. What's really neat about this is that it has these pink veins, which is accented by the pink anthers. So looks like an artist did some nice painting there. Spring beauty is in the purslane family. So it's the same family as common purslane that grows in your garden. That's a weed. Shooting star. Okay, this is another very attractive plant. A little bit taller. It can get maybe 12 inches tall. And you can see that the flower looks like a shooting star. I think it's got 6 petals here, and they point downward. To me, it looks like a badminton birdie, like a shuttlecock. Now, shooting star, you can find it in the woods. Oh, they also come in pink. Okay, so not only white, but you might see pink shooting stars. But you can also find them in remnant prairies, like old prairies, like maybe some old cemeteries that haven't ever been mowed. And you know, shooting star can also be in that habitat as well. Mayapple. All right, so we've again, probably one of the first things you see as you walk into a woods, because you know, how can you not see these great big leaves? They look like umbrellas. I swear in a rainstorm you could crawl underneath there and not get wet. That they're, you know, they just seem like they just can really shade the ground well. There's 2 leaves per plant, and at the axils of those leaves is the flower, and they are flowering right now. I've been out and I've seen these big white flowers, and in the center there is the yellow, bright yellow stamens. So mayapple. And then probably everyone's you know, fan favorite here is Virginia bluebells. I know at Julie, at the office there's that one bank that's just covered with bluebells. You can also find, although it's rare, white bluebells and pink bluebells, but it's the same species. It's Virginia bluebells. Again, another bonus, you have 2 different colors here. It's at first the buds will be pink, and then later when they open up, there'll be this powder blue trumpet-shaped flower. So very unique, very beautiful. I know it's a favorite of many people who walk and hike in the woods. I wish my woods had some bluebells. I'll try to get some starts someplace. Wild geranium. Okay, these are now starting to bloom. It's in the geranium family. Nice big flowers. And you'll find, again, not just one, but several of these. So these grow in colonies. And again, if you look at the leaves, they're unique. They're, again, palmate, lobed here as well. So we have that central point, and then radiating out from the point is the lobes of the leaf. So a palmate venation or palmately lobed leaf. The flowers are typically in that light lavender to pink. I know Celery Bog has quite a few wild geraniums near the lake off that trail. Wood poppy from the poppy family. It has these, again, lobed leaves. The leaves actually contain a yellow sap, and on the underside of the leaf, it's hairy. And the flowers are a big flower, 4 petals. The center is all these yellow stamens, and then you can see this greenish knob right here, and that's the stigma. Okay, so again, bright. I've got one of these growing in my woods. All right, woodland phlox, also blooming now. It's in the phlox family. Again, colonies, you will see, you know, several of these. Now the color will vary depending on kind of where you live or the ecosystem or the environment, but typically it's a light blue to white color. Now it looks like there's 5 petals here, but actually these are lobes. The corolla, and that's not the car that gets good gas mileage. Corolla is a part of the flower that contains the petals, whether they're separate or fused. Okay, so that's what the corolla is. And this corolla is lobed, has 5 lobes. So technically they're not petals. It's a lobed corolla. All right, we got Confederate violet. So the violet family, there's lots of violets that are blooming now. This is one of my favorite violets just because of the variegated color here to the bloom. You have white, you have blue or purple, then you have these violet streaks that go down into the throat of the flower. The foliage is kind of a heart-shaped leaf. We also have woolly blue violet that we're seeing here now, and a few weeks ago they came out. And then also common yellow violet, which is fairly small. It's a really small plant, and but it's unique in that it's got these violet streaks again that go into the throat of the flower. So there's the violets. Wild ginger. Wild ginger is a unique plant in that it doesn't have stems. It's really just kind of a ground cover. It doesn't get very big, but what you see here is the petioles of the leaves, okay? And this whole thing grows from rhizomes under the ground. But the flowers are way down here. The flowers are almost on the ground or touching the ground. You see this white hairy bulb behind the flower, the calyx there, and the flower is kind of three-parted, but very unique. I really like the fuzzy petioles and the leaves. It's almost feels like a newborn puppy, just really soft. But a nice ground cover if you're looking for something in your landscape that's not invasive like winter creeper or periwinkle. Try to get a start of wild ginger. It does like shade though. I mean, it has to have some shade. Okay, squaw root, very unique plant, as you can tell. They kind of look like pine cones. The first thing you notice about squaw root is that it doesn't have any green. Okay, so there's the green that you see is in the background. Those are leaves of something else. But these plants are devoid of green. They're devoid of chlorophyll. It's because they don't photosynthesize. Okay, they're a non-photosynthetic plant. They get their nourishment from the roots of oak trees. Okay, so they're a parasite. And so if you're walking through the woods and you see a clump of squaw root, you look down, you see the squaw root, well, then look up because you're probably standing under a giant oak tree. Okay, so it's very unique. That's the only place you're going to see them is near oak trees. And they don't photosynthesize. Now here's the flowers. The flowers are right here. Okay, and kind of scaly flowers. And then this one here, you see the flowers have already been spent and they've already started to mature and die off. Okay, some plants that haven't flowered yet but will soon here in May and then in June is fire pink. What I like about this plant is that it's probably the only red thing, brilliant red, that's in the woods. Fire pink is a member of the pink family, and the pink family, one of the characteristics is that they have these little sticky hairs all over the plant, especially on the calyx and the flower parts and on the upper stems. And so one of the members or one of the relatives of fire pink is catchfly. So I think that's where they got the name catchfly, is because of the sticky hairs. But a close relative of fire pink is royal catchfly. But the difference is, there's a couple of differences, one is the fire pink has this notch in the tip of the petals and the royal catchfly does not. Also, royal catchfly blooms much later. Okay, it's more of a late summer blooming plant, and it's more of a prairie type ecosystem rather than being in the woods. So even though they look quite a bit alike, they are different. Great waterleaf, that's from the waterleaf family. They have these very large leaves, look like an oak or maple leaves. The flowers are a bright or a light violet or lavender color. Now, this is where you will need your magnifying glass if you want to really be a good botanist, because there are different water leaves, and one of the ways you can identify the difference is by looking at the flower parts, in particular the style. So the style, as I mentioned earlier, is part of the pistils, part of the female flower. It's right here. The stigma is at the end. Here you see a split in the style. Okay, there are some water leaves where the split goes all the way down into the flower. So if you got your magnifying glass and you're really into it, you might be able to identify different water leaves just based on how that split goes, whether it's up near the top or if it splits way back into the flower. Okay, these, what you're seeing is not the flowers, but these are the most conspicuous parts of the plant, obviously. One of my favorites is doll's eyes. You're not going to see this now. This is something you see at the, late summer. It's the flower that's out now, or will be in June. But obviously, very conspicuous plant. I love this thing. Again, it looks like doll's eyes. You got the little black here and the white, and you got the pink flower stalks. But the flower looks like this. So when you're walking through the woods and you see this kind of a white glob, and the leaves are compound leaves, then wait, a couple months, and you may see these conspicuous looking fruits here. Early horse gentian, another conspicuous fruit, look like little cherries or tomatoes right there in the axils of the leaves. But this is what the flower looks like, and they're very hard to see. You really have to be looking for them. They're small, they're maroon, and you can see this light green knob here. That's the stigma. But again, it's right here in the axils of the leaves, so very, very hard to see. But again, they arise later on and show, they'll produce these fruits later in the summer. So a couple of unique plants, mostly based on their fruit, not their flowers. All right, so I'll end with these. These are orchids, both of these. They're rare, and they're endangered. We'll talk about ladies' slippers here. So this is a orchid that has 3 sepals. You can see the sepals here, and 3 petals. And the lower petal is modified into this moccasin or slipper shape here. And then we have orange fringed orchid. Oh, by the way, the ladies' slippers will be blooming here in May, if you are lucky enough to see them on a hike. Orange fringed orchid. This doesn't bloom until July. This is on one of the niches properties as well. But imagine you're walking through the woods, it's dark, it's just everything's green, and then you turn the corner and you see these plants with these orange flowers. So it's just really, really sticks out and very noticeable. Its lower petal is also modified into this fringe here. But both of these orchids are endangered, and Niches is doing a fantastic job of keeping these things protected. They're propagating these through pollination. They're caging these plants so that the deer doesn't eat them. So, and they've really increased over the years. I know a couple years ago I did a count, and I think we were up to like 36 flowers for the ladies' slippers, where in the beginning there was just a couple. So, if you become a member of Niches, your membership will go to supporting great programs like this, keeping these special, important plants alive and thriving. Okay.
Thanks for that, Dan.
What's that?
I said thank you for that. That was very nice.
Oh, you're welcome. Oh, hey, look, we got a quiz. This is something I always do at the end of presentations, just to see if you were sleeping or if you were paying attention. I think Julie said if you get them all right, you get a free membership. Was that? No, she's laughing. No, I guess not. Okay, what are Trillium's 3 sets of 3? Can you name them?
Anyone want to unmute themselves and give it a shot?
Come on, Chad.
Well, it's usually petals, leaves.
It put Chad on the spot here.
Oh boy. How about petals, sepals, and what did I miss?
Yeah, 2 out of 3. One more. What comes up first?
Judy Grimmer's
The
got it.
leaves.
The leaves.
Yeah. Leaves, sepals, and petals. Very good. Mustards have how many petals per flower?
4.
That's exactly right. Wild leeks are prized for their
Onion-like taste.
Will we accept that, judges?
Sure.
We'll accept that. Yes.
We also have an answer of bulbs in the chat box. Yep.
Oh, good. So whoever is chatting in got that one. And genus is the subgroup of the larger what?
Oh, we got the right answer from Judy. Family.
That is correct. Way to go, Julie.
Judy.
Judy, excuse me. I'm hard of hearing. All right. Hey, thank you so much for your participation and interest. And with that, I'll end with this.